I'm just so tired of parenting. Me too. I was utterly appalled. These words, coming from parents, seemed unbelievable. So, Hannah, I'm leaving you with the care of our 5 kids, all right? You seem to like kids. So, take care of the housework and 3 meals a day for us, will you? My first son's wife spread an unrefined smile across her face, with my first son agreeing. Lucky you, Mom. You've got the joy of raising grandchildren in your retirement. Might even extend your life. Anger whitened my brain as my first son and his wife laughed uproariously. I held back my desire to scream at them, responding in a whisper. All right. As the laughing couple left, I murmured to myself while watching their backs. You'll only be laughing for so long. Go ahead, have your fun. I'm Hannah, 82 years old. Since my husband passed away 2 years ago, I've been living in our house filled with memories. For a while after his death, my sons worried about me as if I had lost my soul, but recently, I've finally found the space to enjoy my retirement. At this age, my body doesn't move as it used to, and I tire easily, but my spirit is willing. I find small joys in attending yoga and craft classes at the local community center. My second son, who married 5 years ago and works overseas, makes an effort to visit every time he's back, though he laments not having children. On the other hand, my first son, living in the next city with kids ranging from high school to kindergarten, rarely visits except during the holidays. His wife, from a well-off family and flashy in appearance, willingly helps with cooking and laundry when she visits. I sometimes wish to see my adorable grandchildren more often, but hearing about troubles arising from living with sons and their wives makes occasional visits seem perhaps for the best. I had hoped to maintain a good relationship with my sons and their wives. However, as if mocking my wish, an incident occurred. Returning home from shopping one day, I was surprised to see my first son's wife's car parked. I hadn't received any notice of their visit. Thinking they might be waiting for me in the car, I peeked inside, but it was empty. As I approached the entrance, the lively voices of children reached me from the yard. Opening the door, I found children's belongings scattered around. They never tidy up. Oh, Grandma, we're here. My 17-year-old granddaughter, walking down the hallway, greeted me and began tidying them. And reached for the bag I was holding. Let me help with that, Grandma. Should I put these in the fridge? Yes. Thank you, Michelle. I was impressed by my granddaughter's efficient help. As for their mother, she lay on the living room sofa, engrossed in her cell phone, indifferent to her children playing video games. Hello there. Hi, Hannah. We're just hanging out. She grinned with bright red lipstick. I wish you would have told me you were coming, Nancy. Oops, sorry. I complained to Tom about being tired of parenting, and he said we could get help from you, so here we are until this break ends. Wait, Tom didn't tell me anything. Is that so? Oh, I've got to go soon. There's a reunion at the hotel. Nancy changed into a stylish suit, grabbed her designer bag, and left. Stunned, I turned to find the grandchildren gathering around me like chicks. Grandma, I'm hungry. Is dinner ready? I want an omelet. Is there ice cream for dessert? Just a moment, please. With a high school girl, 2 boys in 4th and 2nd grade, and 2 kindergarten girls. I remembered the challenges of parenting my sons who were 2 years apart. I was one of the few women who worked back then, managing both parenting and work with my husband's support. But for them to come to their grandmother's house without relying on their father. The grandchildren seemed attached to my first son during their rare visits. I wondered if he wasn't supportive of parenting. While making omelets with my eldest granddaughter's help, I tried contacting my son. But only received a standard out of service or phone turned off message. Michelle, has your dad said anything? She tilted her head. No, not really. Dad leaves for work after I go to school and comes back after I'm asleep. We hardly see each other, do we? Then you wouldn't understand. I wanted to pull my hair out at the suddenness of it all, but if they were going back after the break, it meant a 2-week stay starting today. I figured I could manage that. Even if my first son didn't show up, his wife would take care of the kids, right? How naive I was. That day, as my first son's wife didn't come back for a while, I urged the kids to take their baths and put them to bed in the sleeping arrangements I had prepared. The kindergarten girls listened quietly, but the rowdy elementary school boys were too absorbed in their games, leaving their room a mess. If you took your eyes off them for a second, they'd start play fighting, escalating into real arguments. My eldest granddaughter had to step in for her mother and finally got them to listen. As cute as they were, taking care of them while trying to be mindful was physically and mentally draining for an 82-year-old. That night, just as I was dozing off, the sound of the front door opening woke me up. Looking at the clock, it was 2 a.m. The next morning was as noisy as a picnic day. After feeding them breakfast, the two boys immediately went back to their video games. As I was hanging up laundry for 7, the kindergarten girls started whining about being bored, so my eldest granddaughter played with them. When my first son's wife finally woke up around noon, she immediately demanded lunch upon seeing me. I made pasta in 4 batches for 7 people, and after taking a bite, she grimaced. "This is awful." Ignoring my shocked look, she surveyed the grandchildren at the table. "Don't you guys think so? Last night's dinner was bad, wasn't it? The egg was broken. The sauce was different from what they have at the diner. Now that you mention it, it did taste bland. I couldn't drink the vegetable soup." "Mom, stop it. Grandma, it was delicious." The granddaughter tried to cover, but the little one's comments stung. I was sure the omelet's egg did break, but I was confident in my seasoning for both the vegetable soup and yakisoba. Seems I couldn't match everyone's taste. I'm sorry. My first son's wife snorted at my apology. "But you guys, you'll have to endure it even if it's bad. You're living off Grandma's cooking from now on." "Okay, Mom." "What? Nancy, you're cooking too, right? You're taking care of the kids, aren't you?" When I asked in surprise, my first son's wife brushed it off nonchalantly. "Impossible. I'm busy with friends' parties and shopping at the department store." "What?" I was taken aback. "I don't mind helping, but you're their mother. You should be taking care of your kids." After a sharp retort, my first son's wife's eyes widened. She silently put down her fork, left the table in her pajamas, and stormed out of the house. In the evening, when I went to bring in the laundry, I noticed a fist-sized hole in the drywall by the stairs. That night, I finally got a call from my first son, who had been unreachable. "Hey, Mom! Stop bullying my wife!" He started with a shout. "I'm not bullying her. Tom, please come and see me. You're so petty. Let her be if she wants to go out shopping. You're a father too. You shouldn't dump everything on Nancy, you should help take care of the kids. Just come home for once." "No way. I'm busy with my trips to the casino. Housework and childcare are women's work, right? If the wife can't handle it, you take care of it." With those outdated words, the call ended. When I tried calling back, it went straight to voicemail. After throwing away the leftovers and washing the dishes, a miserable feeling washed over me. It seemed like my son and his wife thought of me as a free maid and babysitter. Of course, I didn't mind looking after them occasionally. With 5 kids from high school to kindergarten, it's understandable they'd be overwhelmed at times. But basic manners are necessary. It felt absurd to be suddenly burdened with childcare, criticized for the meals I provided, and then told she was too busy to help. What worried me most was my eldest granddaughter, who had been supporting me in place of her mother. Once the younger kids were asleep, I called the high school granddaughter to the kitchen. "Michelle, thank you for always helping." It was still chilly in late March, especially at night. When I offered my pajama-clad granddaughter a mug of hot milk, she gratefully accepted it and gently blew on it before taking a sip. "Michelle, you're really good with household chores, aren't you?" "Really? Do you think so?" Her smile made my heart ache as I decided to address the concern I had been harboring. "Have you been taking care of things in place of your mom?" Her face fell instantly. And she nodded slightly, looking down. "Well, Mom's hardly ever home, and Dad's always busy with golf and socializing. I have to look after my brother and sister and do the chores, or our home just wouldn't function." After a moment of contemplation, she hesitantly murmured, "Actually, there's something I've been wanting to talk to you about." "What is it?" That night, my granddaughter and I talked until late. The next day, after asking my eldest granddaughter to watch the house, I went out on my bike to shop for groceries. Returning home, I was momentarily relieved to see my first son's car in the driveway. However, my confusion grew as I noticed a moving truck parked on the street. As I opened the door, puzzled, two movers in blue uniforms were navigating a chest of drawers up our narrow staircase. My bag dropped to the ground with a thud as I stared in disbelief. "Mom, you're back," my first son called out from the end of the hallway, looking up the stairs. "These old houses lack closets and have such steep stairs, huh?" "Well, yeah. But it's spacious, which is nice. Our family home got renovated into a 3-story building with an elevator, and we lost the yard. In a high-end neighborhood, that's plenty enough." "Hey!" I interjected, somewhat amused by the couple's casual banter. "What's going on here?" "Huh? Why are your things being moved into my house?" "Well, you told us to come back," my son replied nonchalantly. "So, here we are. Got laid off from my job, so it worked out perfectly." "Wait, not like that. You got laid off?" "Yeah, it's convenient being close to the station and easy to get to the downtown area," his wife chimed in dreamily, clasping her hands together. "Right? The arcades are close by, too. Can stay out late and still save on taxi fares." "Hold on, this isn't what we agreed on. You were supposed to go back to your place after spring break, right?" I questioned my son, who just grinned sheepishly. "That's impossible. Got evicted for not paying rent, so we've got nowhere to go." "Yeah, and since you've got extra rooms, it's perfect," his wife added, without a hint of embarrassment. "This is unacceptable. Find an apartment or something and move out, okay?" I demanded, confronting them sternly, to which my daughter-in-law just shrugged. "I'm just so tired of parenting." "Me too," my son agreed, making me swallow my words as his wife flipped her hair, uttering that shocking statement. "Kids are loud and messy. Just being in the same space, hearing their voices, or seeing their faces gets on my nerves. Someone who's got nothing better to do should take care of them. They never listen. It's so tiring to take care of them," the couple complained, distorting their faces in disgust. I was utterly appalled by their attitude. These words, coming from parents, were inconceivable. "So, Mom, we're leaving the care of our 5 kids to you. You like kids, right?" my daughter-in-law sneered at me. "So, you'll take care of the housework and 3 meals a day for us. Lucky you, Mom. You've got more joy in your retirement, raising grandchildren. Might even extend your life." "Give me a break," I retorted, my head spinning with anger. I held back the urge to scream at them, replying in a whisper. "All right." As the couple left with a burst of laughter, I murmured to myself, watching their backs. "You'll only be laughing for so long. Go ahead, have your fun. They might think of me as an idle old lady, but my current leisure is a reward for years of hard work and parenting. As I enter the latter half of my life, why shouldn't I relax a bit? It irks me." After venting to my second son via message, he immediately called, and I took the opportunity to consult with him. A few days later, on an afternoon when the prolonged rain had finally stopped, the screams of my first son and his wife echoed through the area. "Mom, you're causing a disturbance in the neighborhood," my eldest granddaughter scolded, opening a window that looked out to the garden. My daughter-in-law collapsed in front of the mud-covered furniture, tears welling up in her eyes. "All the furniture, from the chest to the shelf and clothes rack, is covered in mud." "Hey, Mom, what the hell are you doing? Throwing our furniture out into the garden like that?" My son's face turned red with anger as he glared at me. "Well, it was you two who moved in without asking. Have you ever listened to my opinion even once?" I retorted, looking down at the garden, and they were momentarily speechless. "Besides, all you do is complain. Dumping the care of the grandchildren on me. It helps that your eldest daughter, Michelle, takes care of the little ones, but even just meals, laundry, and cleaning are incredibly tiring. How about you two start taking some parental responsibility?" "Shut up, old lady!" my son cursed rudely. "I don't want to hear any lectures at my age. Just quietly take care of the grandkids without complaining." "That's right. We're giving you quality time with your adorable grandchildren, so why complain? Besides, you don't appreciate your daughter-in-law enough for giving birth to 5 grandkids. You should be giving us more money," my daughter-in-law ranted, with my son nodding in agreement. "Yeah, it's lively and fun every day, right? We're giving a lonely old person living alone a taste of happy times. Plus, you get to experience life in a big family. This is filial piety." My headache intensified, so I closed my eyes and pressed my forehead. Were they seriously making these arguments? It's like forced kindness. I told myself to stay calm and tried to reason with them. I was living peacefully, enjoying my hobbies, and you two ruined that. You bring the kids over without asking, dump them on me, and go off to enjoy yourselves. And then you talk about filial piety. I sighed deeply and crossed my arms. If it was just for a few days, fine, but if you're staying long-term, I'm going to start charging for utilities and food. It suddenly increased eightfold. What? You're loaded, and you're going to charge us, who are out of work, for living expenses. How greedy! The richer they are, the stingier, huh? I don't want to end up like that when I'm old. Say what you will. Oh, why not ask Nancy's parents for help? They're wealthier than us. I suggested with a hint of sarcasm, and my daughter-in-law snapped back. As if I could tell my dad that my husband's unemployed. He'd disown me. Then it seemed logical for my son to start job hunting, but there was no sign of that. He was too busy with his daily visits to the pachinko parlor. My daughter-in-law had no intention of working either, spending her days shopping for high-end items and depleting their savings. Once their savings were gone, they'd likely turn to me. But I had no intention of allowing that. Nancy's father is strict, huh? Typical of a CEO. Exactly. Then showing him this photo would surely get Nancy disowned, right? My daughter-in-law, who had been wiping the wet furniture with a towel, looked over at me. As I fiddled with my phone, my son approached with a puzzled look and peeked at the screen. His expression turned from shock to anger. Nancy? What? Have you been cheating on me? My daughter-in-law froze. Dropping the towel, she rushed over to see the image on my phone, turning pale. How did you find out? Michelle saw you walking arm in arm with your affair partner after school, followed you, and saw you both enter a condo together. She thought that was proof enough. Michelle! Why didn't you keep quiet? It's wrong to blame your daughter. The results from the detective I hired the other day are here. I showed my son images of them entering a hotel together, his face growing increasingly stern. Suddenly, my daughter-in-law snatched my phone and stomped on it, shattering the screen. It's pointless to do that. The data is backed up elsewhere. I told my daughter-in-law calmly, causing her to make a frustrated face. Make sure you compensate for the phone later. Good thing I contacted my former colleague early on. Huh? What are you talking about? My attempt to grab my collar was interrupted by a group of men in polo shirts who had just walked into the yard, tapping her on the shoulder, causing her to turn around in confusion. That's enough, they said, showing their police badges all at once, which took my daughter-in-law by surprise. Huh? Next to the bewildered daughter-in-law, my son covered his mouth with his hand, turning pale. Please don't cause any trouble. We're quite busy as it is, said an older man, giving me a wry smile. The trouble wasn't caused by me but by my son and his wife. Complaint to them. Okay. Long time no see, Tom. Hello, he responded, clearly overwhelmed by their authoritative presence and sharp gaze, while his wife glared at him from the side. Tom, you know them? They're my mom's former colleagues. Huh? She said, looking at me with a face full of shock. As I told you, you'll be charged with trespassing and your wife with property damage. Huh? Why? Just because we brought the kids over to Grandma's? Be quiet. I snapped, and she flinched, closing her mouth. Anyone who enters or refuses to leave a dwelling, building, or vessel without a valid reason or upon request faces sending to prison or a fine. Fits the bill, doesn't it? I pressed on. Anyone who damages or injures another person's property faces being in prison or a fine. This applies to you too, Nancy. All this for that? Suing a family is ridiculous, isn't it? She argued, her face contorted in disbelief. It seems you're not aware, my dear, so let me enlighten you. Even family members can sue each other. Tom seems to understand. Tom had been silent, his face drawn and shaking. Wait, you can get arrested for that? We haven't issued an arrest warrant yet. This is a voluntary appearance. So, I can refuse, right? You can, but if there's a risk of flight or evidence tampering, we'll switch to arrest. I explained, watching her face fall from hope to dismay. Tom had already resigned himself to the situation, slumping in defeat. Well, you threw our furniture out into the garden too. I'll sue you for that later. Be my guest. I'll compensate you. It'll be covered by the food and utility bills for the time you've stayed here, plus the settlement for property damage and trespassing. I spoke matter-of-factly, and she fell silent, biting back her frustration. Let's have a chat at the station, shall we? The officers, indifferent to their plight, led my former subordinates and the young detective to their car. I asked another detective to check the damaged wall, guiding him to the scene. He took photos, noted the situation, and returned to the car. I had told my subordinates to come quietly in an unmarked car to avoid neighborhood gossip. Since it was just a voluntary appearance and not an emergency, the unmarked car left quietly without sirens. The young grandchildren, absorbed in their games, were oblivious to the unfolding events. Only my eldest granddaughter had been watching from the yard. I'm sorry, Michelle. She shook her head in response. Grandma, you arranged for a voluntary appearance instead of an arrest to think of us, even though my parents caused so much trouble. I'm sorry, and thank you. There's no need for you to apologize, Michelle. I reassured her with a smile, patting her back gently. It's okay. I did it to teach them a lesson. They'll have to pay the settlement, though. What's going to happen to us now? It seems we have nowhere to go, she murmured, looking lost. I had an idea and quickly contacted my second son, asking him to come over. When my first son and his wife were brought in for questioning, they were a mess, shaking so much they could hardly write. For the first time in their lives, my first son and his wife were brought in for voluntary questioning. Inside the station, they were so shaken that they couldn't stop sniffling and were trembling so much they couldn't write properly. Despite evidence leading towards arrest, I quickly proposed a settlement, and the two who agreed were released. They trudged back to my house with sour faces to apologize for their past actions. But I had no intention of forgiving them. As previously discussed, I made them pay for the utility and food expenses for all 7 of us during their stay, in addition to a nuisance fee for dumping the care of the grandchildren on me. This drained their savings completely, leaving them without any money for leisure. Concerned about the future of my grandchildren, I had already discussed the situation with my second son and his wife, who had returned from abroad. The couple, unable to have children of their own, had always played with the grandchildren during their visits, in place of my negligent first son and his wife. Angered by this incident, I arranged a meeting between my returning first son and his wife and the couple. Don't you guys love your children? My second son asked angrily. My first son retorted with frustration. You wouldn't understand the trouble of taking care of kids. They cost money, are noisy, and never listen. I don't need anyone who doesn't obey me. Then, would it be okay if we took them in? Sure, take them. All of them. Agreed. We'll start the paperwork right away. The agreement was made smoothly, and the grandchildren were taken in by my second son. Feeling relieved of their burden. My first son and his wife felt relieved of their burden, but their income plummeted without the child allowances. With the little money they had left, they found an old apartment and survived by juggling part-time jobs. However, unable to forgive his wife's infidelity, my first son initiated a divorce, and they began living separately, which meant their salaries were swallowed up by living expenses, leaving no money for leisure. Especially hard-hit was his wife, whose life turned miserable. Furious upon learning she had been squandering her salary, my first son demanded compensation for the amount spent, combined with alimony, amounting to a staggering sum. After pleading with her CEO father, she was disowned when he learned of her affair. She started working at a supermarket checkout during weekdays and at a bar at night and weekends, using her salary for monthly repayments, quickly becoming haggard. When I accidentally ran into her at a supermarket, I hardly recognized her due to her drastically aged appearance. My second son, working for a multinational company, and his wife, who worked part-time, showered the grandchildren with love, something they had always wanted. The children, who had always been attached to their uncle, thrived under the care of my kind second son and his capable wife. They settled close to my home, allowing me to visit any time and often bringing the grandchildren to my place. The boys, who used to fight constantly, calmed down, and the kindergarten girls started playing together nicely. Most importantly, the 17-year-old granddaughter, who had been acting as a mother, regained her youthful vitality. She runs up to me happily during our visits. Grandma! Look, isn't this cute? She'd show me silly selfies with her friends and stylish pancakes they had at cafes, all from her phone. Seeing the carefree behavior of a modern high school student, I felt a wave of relief. My second son and his wife plan to formally adopt the children once they're a bit older. I've blocked my first son and his wife's contacts, freeing myself from their constant begging for money. Watching my grandchildren play games and laugh, I deeply felt the desire to maintain a good, long-lasting relationship with my second son and his wife from a healthy distance.